The National Broadcasting Company, in conjunction with the Fund for Adult Education, presents Democracy in America by Alexis de Tocqueville.
The ideas of progress and of the indefinite perfectibility of the human race belong to democratic ages. The America of 1831 is devoted to equality, and equality suggests several ideas that would not have originated from any other source, and it modifies almost all those previously entertained. I take as an example the idea of human perfectibility and progress because it is a great philosophical theory, everywhere to be traced by its consequence in the conduct of human affairs.
The Cold Water Army. A study in American progress. Item 7 in the series Democracy in America, prepared by the Division of General Education of New York University, under the direction of George Probst, American historian. A series designed to bring to life the America of 1831, as recorded by Alexis de Tocqueville, and so to illuminate the image of democracy itself. A study in American progress. The Cold Water Army.
Although man has many points of resemblance with the brutes, one trait is peculiar to himself. He improves. They are incapable of improvement. The idea of perfectibility is as old as the world. Equality did not give birth to it, but equality has imparted to it a new character. An aristocratic society can conceive improvement, but not change. An aristocratic society can imagine the future condition of the world may be better, but not essentially different. But in a democracy, the image of an ideal, the always fugitive perfection, presents itself to the human mind. Thus it was that when my friend Beaumont and I set foot in the United States in 1831, we were stunned by the tumult.
On every side, 1,000 simultaneous voices demand the satisfaction of their social wants.
Not a reading man, but has a draft of a new community in his vest pocket.
We're all a little wild here with numberless projects of social reform.
We students of Yale, therefore, solemnly form ourselves into a band and vow never to cease in our efforts, but totally to devote ourselves to the salvation of Illinois.
Progress is the great topic of inquiry.
Come, join the Cold Water Army. Join us now, join us now. Come join the Cold Water Army. Join us, join us, join us now.
Now, brothers, all come at our call and join us in our roundelay. The pledge divine, make haste and sign, for 'tis our temperance holiday.
Yes, sisters, all we've heard your call and join you in your melody. We whine, resign, the pledge we'll sign and sing with you in harmony. Come join the Cold Water Army. Join us now, join us now. Come join the Cold Water Army. Join us, join us, join us now.
Be ashamed to die until you have won some victory for humanity.
Ancient injustices are no longer tolerable. This association calls for the end of sweatshops and the establishment of the 10-hour working day.
The new College of Oberlin will ban tea, coffee, meat, fish, pepper and other condiments, gravy, butter, and practically anything with taste enough to be a temptation of the flesh.
As the editor of a newspaper, I must ask for the heavenly compassion of my female readers for my persistence in the sin of celibacy. But I am so much engaged in building up the newspaper and reforming the age that actually I have scarcely time to say, how'd you do?
In a democracy, no one sits quietly in despair of improving his condition.
Bread, rent, fuel, their prices must come down. The people will meet in the park, rain or sunshine, at 4 o'clock on Monday afternoon to inquire into the cause of the present unexampled distress and devise a suitable remedy.
Meetings are called to denounce the government and to deplore the laxity of the day.
Would you believe it? They no longer arrest people who travel on Sundays. And even the mail coach, carrying government dispatches, now goes its rounds on the day of the Lord. If this disastrous trend is not stopped, all is over. Not only with our private morality, but with public morality too.
Societies are formed which regard drunkenness as the principal cause of the evils of the state.
Young man, shun that cup. Touch not a drop therein. In youth it ruined me when filled with rum and gin.
Societies are formed for everything.
Matters have come to such a pass that a peaceable man can hardly venture to eat or drink or to go to bed or to get up, to correct his children or to kiss his wife without obtaining the permission and direction of some society.
It is impossible to spend more effort in the pursuit of happiness. To take a hand in the regulation of society and to discuss it is his biggest concern, and, so to speak, the only pleasure an American knows. Debating clubs are, to a certain extent, a substitute for theatrical entertainments. An American cannot converse, but he can discuss, and his talk falls into a dissertation. He speaks to you as if he were addressing a meeting. And if he should chance to become warm in the discussion, he will address the man he's talking to as gentlemen.
After all, gentlemen, reformers are metallic. They are sharpest steel. They pierce whatsoever of evil or abuse they touch. They are armed in the might of principles. And, gentlemen, God backs their purpose. They uproot institutions, erase traditions, revise usages, and renovate all things. Reformers are the noblest of creatures. Living in time, they work for eternity. Dwelling with men, they are with God.
Forever seeking, forever falling to rise again, often disappointed, but not discouraged, the American tends unceasingly toward that unmeasured greatness so indistinctly visible at the end of the long track which humanity has yet to tread.
We live in a period of the world and a stage of society favorable to every charitable institution and useful improvement. Never were the poor and miserable more generously taken care of. In these western countries of the earth, we have equal strength and beauty of body. With them we have as improvable and elegant minds, and unless untoward and sad events alter our situation, may exhibit human nature in as favorable a point of view as it has ever yet appeared.
It can hardly be believed how many facts naturally flow from the philosophical theory of the indefinite perfectibility of man, or how strong an influence it exercises even on those who, living entirely for the purposes of action and not of thought, seem to conform their actions to it without knowing anything about it.
Remember, Tocqueville, our conversation with Mr. Poinsett?
Mr. Poinsett, of course, was also a man of considerable thought.
He was indeed. He was a distinguished world traveler. He had been ambassador to Mexico. He was a personal agent of President Andrew Jackson. And finally, Mr. Poinsett had a beautiful red flower named after him. We met him at a tavern in South Carolina, and together we traveled back to Washington and talked and talked and talked. And in part, we talked about American progress.
We are told, Mr. Poinsett, that Americans are very economical when it comes to managing ships. Why?
Well, Mr. Tocqueville, the American sailor possesses an activity and an economical bent. He has an understanding of his own interests. Price of labor is high. Ships cost more to build here than in Europe, but we look for other ways to make improvements. There's not an English or a French vessel crosses the ocean in as little time as ours. None that stays as short a time in port. I'll tell you something. The American has a quality, land or sea, which makes him singularly apt to succeed and make money.
We have observed that.
Of course you have, sir.
Let me return to these American ships.
Yes, Mr. Bowman?
I have heard it said that these beautiful, fast ships of yours generally don't last very long.
Well, Mr. Beaumont, I think you might begin by... Well, you have to distinguish between ships built for sail and those built for your own use.
I see.
There is in the North a shipbuilding industry. And in fact, the vessels it produces do have a short life. But when we want to make a ship that we can use as long as possible, we find in the building woods of the South, particularly in the live oak of the Floridas, the best materials in the world. What makes our ships last such a short time is the fact that our merchants often don't have much disposable capital to begin with. It's a calculation on their part. Provided that the vessel lasts long enough to bring them in a certain sum, a certain profit, well, that's all they expect. Besides, there's a general feeling among us Americans that prevents our aiming at the durable in anything. There reigns in America a popular and universal faith in the progress of the human mind. Americans are always expecting that improvements will be discovered in everything. And in fact, they are often right.
Does everyone act on this sort of system?
Certainly, Mr. Tocqueville. Any American sailor will tell you that ships aren't built to last because of progress.
In the words which fall accidentally on a particular subject from an uninstructed sailor, I recognize the general and systematic idea upon which a great people direct all their concerns. The idea of perfection, of a continuous and endless bettering of social conditions. This idea is presented unceasingly in all its aspects.
Our original purpose in visiting America was to study its prisons. And here, as everywhere, the American spirit of perfectibility pervaded everything. Tocqueville, do you remember our first sight of the great prison of Sing Sing? We were traveling up the Hudson River on a warm May morning.
The first warm May morning. It had been quite cold up to then.
And an American chatted to us, eager, as always, to explain his country to the strangers from France.
And here's another thing you'll want to know. And now you make a note of this, too.
Yes, sir.
If you're aiming to spend a little time with us, this may be useful to you. We think a man can do anything. Anyone told you that before?
Not in so many words, but we have noticed a great flexibility.
Well, that's what we believe. We believe a man can do anything. We believe if something needs to be done, then someone can do it. We believe that people can do what they want to. If they want something, they can get it. That's what we believe, and that's the way we act. If we think anything needs to be changed, and gentlemen, I mean anything, from the face of the planet itself to the most complicated of human institutions, if we think it ought to be changed, and we know it can be changed, and we know that we can change it, and we go right ahead and do it. Now, you remember that.
We have noticed change and alteration on all sides.
Good. And there's evidence coming into sight right around that bend.
Where do you mean?
That great stone building there is a machine for changing human nature. It's the new penitentiary of Sing Sing.
But that is our destination. That is what we've come to your country to study.
Fine, gentlemen. You will find here that we don't give up even the most hardened criminal as hopeless. If man is capable of improvement, he will be improved in America.
In America, there is not only belief in progress, but there are innumerable societies to promote progress.
Oh, Beaumont, those societies. Americans of all ages, all conditions, and all dispositions constantly form associations of 1,000 kinds: religious, moral, serious, futile, general or restricted, enormous or diminutive. The Americans make associations to give entertainments, to found seminaries, to build inns, to construct churches, to diffuse books, to send missionaries to the antipodes. In this manner, they found hospitals, prisons, and schools. If it is proposed to inculcate some truth or to foster some feeling by the encouragement of a great example, they form a society. Wherever at the head of some new undertaking you see the government in France or a man of rank in England, in the United States, you will be sure to find an association.
The American Tract Society.
The American Peace Society.
The American Home Missionary Society.
The General Union for promoting the Christian observance of the Sabbath.
The American Association for redeeming females who have deviated from the paths of virtue.
That is to say, societies are formed to resist evils that are exclusively of a moral nature. There is no end which the human will despairs of attaining through the combined power of individuals united into a society. Consider, for example, the societies for the abolition of slavery, and the fiery words of William Lloyd Garrison, who on January the 1st, 1831, 4 months before we landed in America, published the first issue of the Liberator and proclaimed the war cry of the abolitionists.
I determined by every hazard to lift up the standard of emancipation in the eyes of the nation, assenting to the self-evident truth maintained in the American Declaration of Independence that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, among which are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I shall strenuously contend for the immediate enfranchisement of our slave population. In Park Street Church on the 4th of July, 1829, in an address on slavery, I unreflectingly assented to the popular but pernicious doctrine of gradual abolition. I seized this opportunity to make a full and unequivocal recantation, and thus publicly to ask pardon of my God, of my country, and of my brethren the poor slaves for having uttered a sentiment so full of timidity, injustice, and absurdity. I am aware that many may object to the severity of my language, but is there not cause for severity? I will be as harsh as truth and as uncompromising as justice. On this subject, I do not wish to think or speak or write with moderation. No, no! Tell a man whose house is on fire to give a moderate alarm. Tell him to moderately rescue his wife from the hands of the ravisher. Tell the mother to gradually extricate her babe from the fire into which it has fallen. But urge me not to use moderation in a cause like the present. I am in earnest. I will not equivocate. I will not excuse. I will not retreat a single inch. And I will be heard.
Here is the intensity, the fury, the fanaticism of the man who burns to bring progress, who burns to free the 2 million Negro slaves. But all this zeal was met with counter-zeal. In the southern states, it became a crime for Negroes to read, and southern judges were severe in judgment. In Norfolk, Virginia, for example.
Of all the Negro race, there cannot be found another so large a body as the millions of slaves in the United States, at once so intelligent, so inclined to the gospel, and so blessed by the elevating influence of civilization and Christianity. But many now living will remember how and when and why the anti-slavery fury began, and by what means its manifestations were made public. Our mails were clogged with abolition pamphlets and inflammatory documents to be distributed among our southern Negroes to induce them to cut our throats. These, however, were not the only means resorted to by the northern fanatics to stir up insubordination among our slaves. They scattered far and near pocket handkerchiefs and other similar articles with frightful engravings and printed over with anti-slavery nonsense, with the view to work upon the feelings of ignorance of our Negroes, who otherwise would have remained comfortable and happy. The prisoner is therefore sentenced to 1 month in jail for the crime of teaching a Negro child to read.
But the abolitionists are not the only ones who are zealous in their wish for progress. As soon as several of the inhabitants of the United States have taken up an opinion or a feeling which they wish to promote in the world, they look out for mutual assistance. And as soon as they have found one another out, They combine. From that moment, they are no longer isolated men, but a power seen from afar, whose actions serve for an example, and whose language is listened to.
Lo, the temperance banner floating free o'er a gallant band. Hark the temperance legion shouting victory through the land. On to the battle on, strike the fell monster down. Fight, 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 day and night, gaze the tyrant alcohol. Fight, 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 day and night, gaze the tyrant alcohol.
That is a song, as the people themselves say, composed, selected, arranged, and adapted to the cause of total abstinence.
Do you remember, Tocqueville, that man we met in Albany on the 4th of July? The one who wanted us to join the Cold Water Army?
Gentlemen, I happen to have here a few little pamphlets which I should be pleased if you'd carry back with you for the interest and edification of the French people. I've inscribed them all on the title page, E.C. Delavan's respects, and I hope you'll forgive the liberty.
Oh, we are delighted. Let me see. Second annual report of the New York Temperance Society.
Founded by myself in company with Dr. Eliphalet Nutt.
Most interesting, evidently. What is a temperance society?
Has to do with the evils of strong drink. I crusade against it.
Oh, of course. We agree with you. Moderation in all things.
Temperance, sir, does not mean moderation. As far as strong drink is concerned, temperance means abstinence. Let me draw your attention to some of those fine colored plates. Section of the liver of a drunkard who died miserably some little while since in Poughkeepsie.
Oh.
Interior of the stomach of a drunkard who perished in agony near Syracuse.
Ah.
Series of cross-sections of the spleen.
Oh, thank you. We have seen sufficient.
Well, they're fine pictures. I'm working now on something which I'll take the liberty of transmitting to you gentlemen, seeing that you're from France. It's to be entitled Temperance in Wine Countries. And I'm sure you'll agree that your unhappy nation certainly qualifies in that category.
Certainly, sir. The wines of France are the pride and delight of the civilized world.
Not in this quarter, they're not. The cases I've collected, you'd be surprised if the New York Temperance Society has its way. And sooner or later, it will have its way. Any kind of alcohol will be totally prohibited in this state, and anywhere else we can prohibit it.
But is not this an intrusion on the rights of the individual? If you do not like alcohol, well and good. But are all men to be forced to your mold? On what grounds do you propose these extraordinary things?
On the grounds of morality. You gentlemen are strangers to America. You're from Europe. You're not acquainted with morality. You are not aware of the moral force and power of aroused public opinion as it's found and cultivated in this free land of ours.
Are there a great many reformers in America who seek to influence others to their views on moral grounds?
A very great many. Some of them, of course, are nothing more than infernal busybodies. There's a gang out to try and prevent Americans from indulging in their inalienable right to chew tobacco. Oh. That kind of thing is just nosy Parkerism, far removed from the wholehearted public decency of a movement such as our own. I'll leave all these pamphlets with you. Shall you be staying in town some days? Shall you be here over the 4th?
That is our expectation.
I trust the elevated tone of the proceedings will not be marred by strong drink and debauchery. However, we shall hope for the best and expect the worst.
The first time I heard in the United States that 100,000 men had bound themselves publicly to abstain from spirituous liquors, it appeared to me more like a joke than a serious engagement. And I did not at once perceive why these temperate citizens could not content themselves with drinking water by their own firesides. I at last understood that these 100,000 Americans, alarmed by the progress of drunkenness around them, had made up their minds to be patrons of temperance. They acted in just the same way as a man of high rank who should dress very plainly in order to inspire the humbler orders with a contempt of luxury. It is probable that if these 100,000 men had lived in France, Each of them would individually, by himself, have memorialized the government to keep an eye on the saloons and public houses.
And they were certainly effective. By 1835, there were 1,200,000 members of the American Temperance Society. There were 8,000 local affiliates and organizations in every state but one.
It is a universal American idea that the promotion of public progress is the proper concern of the private citizen. And this idea can be found clearly and explicitly stated in the American press.
I see no reason why the wildest dreams of the fanatical believer in human progress and perfectibility may not ultimately be realized. And each child so trained as to shun every vice, aspire to every virtue, attain the highest practicable skill in art and efficiency in industry, loving and pursuing honest, untasked labor for the health, vigor, and peace of mind thence resulting, as well as for its more palpable rewards, and joyfully recognizing in universal good the only assurance of individual good.
Aristocratic nations are naturally too liable to narrow the scope of human perfectibility. Democratic nations to expand it beyond reason. Democratic nations care but little for what has been, but they are haunted by visions of what will be. In this direction, their unbounded imagination grows and dilates beyond all measure. Nothing deters the American in his undertakings. Nothing discourages his efforts. He has a fund of energy in his soul to improve man and society. This same daring enterprise has given birth to American industry, whose marvels astonish me. Those canals, those railroads which penetrate the continent, the businesses which enrich the commerce of all nations, the fertile fields, the magnificent cities and smiling villages, everywhere wealth and plenty. To democratic ages belong unquestionably the ideas of progress and of the indefinite perfectibility of the human race.
You have just heard The Cold Water Army, a study in American progress. Item 7 in a series based on Alexis de Tocqueville's Democracy in America. This series, presented by the National Broadcasting Company, was prepared by the Division of General Education of New York University under the direction of George Probst, American historian. Produced in the studios of the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation by Andrew Allen. Script by Lister Sinclair. Music by Lucio Agostini. This series, Democracy in America, is made possible by a grant from the Fund for Adult Education as part of a general course of study of the nature of American society. Teachers of American history and American civilization and adult education leaders may be interested in using these dramatizations and other materials, which are available for study and discussion at a reasonable charge. For information, write to American Foundation for Continuing Education, Post Office Box 749, Chicago 90, Illinois. Now, this is Ben Grauer inviting you to listen next week to The Heavenly Prison, Item 8 on Democracy in America. This has been an NBC Radio Network presentation.
Your best buys are the quality name brands featured on NBC Radio.
The American West. Once it could have been the British, Spanish, or even the Russian West. It became American primarily because of the explorations of two young Army officers, Meriwether Lewis and William Clark. Their pioneering journey stands as one of the great achievements in the history of the United States.
I don't remember that bluff to port, Bill. You think we ought to put it between us and the main channel?
Why not? It's an island.
I hope you're right. Otherwise, we come back and try the other side.
It's worth the gamble. Water's not near as rough here.
I wish all our boats handled as easy as this one.
Those kind they won't sell. This kind you have to steal.
We didn't steal it.
We didn't?
I left $5 by the tree where we found it.
You left $5 after the way those people stole from us all winter?
I guess it was my strict upbringing. Cruzat, hold back, will you? We've run away from the other boat.
Yes, sir. Someone's catching up to us from behind.
It's a canoe like this. Indian rough water canoe.
With an Indian in it. Meriwether, he's trying to get our attention.
Looks like a Clatsop warrior. Want me to wait for him, sir?
Yes.
Oh! Oh! You go Columbia?
Columbia east, to the Shining Mountains.
Go wrong way.
Wrong way?
This not island. This finger of land. Go back. Other side bluff main channel.
Seems I was wrong.
We thank you very much.
Like a big sea canoe?
Very good.
Big canoe, my canoe.
You mean our canoe?
Leave 5 silver medal at 3. Take back.
That's white man's money to pay for the canoe. Show it to the next trading ship, Captain. It'll buy you a boatload of blue beads.
No want silver medal. Take back.
All right, but we need the canoe.
Canoe, my canoe.
We'll pay you anything you want. How about this fine elk skin?
Elk skin, good. Give 5.
1.
5.
No trade. When other canoes come, we give you back this canoe.
4 elk skin.
2.
2 skin. I sell.
Cruzat, pay him.
There you are. 2 fine elk skins.
Now, good canoe. Your canoe. Turn round. Take main channel. Other side bluff.
Horizons West, the continued story of the Lewis and Clark expedition. Now with Harry Bartell as Meriwether Lewis and John Anderson as William Clark, listen to Chapter 9, Homeward Bound. March 23, 1806. The Lewis and Clark Corps of Discovery had left dismal Fort Clatsop at the mouth of the Columbia River and was beginning the return trip from Oregon to St. Louis. With almost no trade goods, short on essential equipment, and carrying the ailing Private Bratton, the valiant men of the expedition faced a journey that required a second arduous crossing of the Rockies and over 2,000 miles of difficult, twisting travel down the Missouri River.
That night, encamped on the river island, we stuffed ourselves with venison cooked as only Toussaint Charbonneau could cook it. Basking before a warm fire, the men were happier than I'd seen them in months.
7 fat deer. Good hunting, George.
I was lucky today, Captain.
And good cooking, Charbonneau.
Oh, merci. It was good for a chance to have something to cook, huh?
I ran into an Indian today. He said the tribe upriver are starving.
With all those fish in the river?
Yes.
Do you see any fish coming up river?
Well, I wasn't especially looking for them.
Salmon don't run for another month.
Just how good is the hunting here, George?
Well, it is supposed to be better on Deer Island and Wapato upstream a little further, according to that Indian.
Want to hold up a few days, Meriwether?
Might be a good idea. Send most of the party out to hunt, dry the meat, make us some jerky.
A few days is all that we need. Just to get enough meat to take us to the upland. A little past the uplands.
We'll stay. At Wapato, if that's the best. Sergeant Gass will want an early start in the morning.
Yes, sir.
As soon as we reach the island, we'll set up drying racks for the meat. You'll be in charge of that, Charbonneau.
Yes, sir. Captain Clark, we're going to have to build fires to dry the meat in this rain.
That's right. Better get them started.
Renault, Field, Vidar, and La Biche. All right, let us take to the south side.
Dirac, make them with side braces.
I looked across the river toward the south. The land undulated to meet the mountains we called the Cascades, some high enough to be crowned with perpetual snow. To the west, the lush lowlands lifted toward a range of coastal mountains. I could see them clearly as the rain stopped.
What's on your mind, Billy?
That South Valley. There ought to be a river draining it.
A big one, entering the Columbia.
Only we didn't see a sign of one coming west.
It could be there, hidden from us by islands. Look.
What?
Those vultures overhead. Sergeant Ordway, tell the carrying parties to stick closer to the hunters.
The vultures kept an obscene surveillance of the island, moving in the direction of each gunshot, spiraling downward with swift gracefulness. Fortunately, the killing of a number of these birds seemed to make the others more wary. They kept their distance, and the men got to the meat first. Attracted by the shots, two lean young Kashuk Indian braves heading downriver beached the canoe and, making the sign of friendship, trotted over to Meriwether Lewis at one of the fires. They were given food, and something they said as they ate brought Meriwether to me in great excitement.
Billy, your instincts are right, as usual. I guess we could say you're as good a geographer as Dreyar is a hunter.
What are you getting at?
Those two braves are Kashuks. They live in the valley you've been wondering about, and it is drained by a big river they call the Multnomah.
I thought so. Meriwether will be here almost a week, drying and curing the meat. Why don't I reconnoiter southward?
Well, we could spare a half-dozen men and hire one of the Kashuks as a guide.
Gass! Sergeant Gass!
Yes, sir.
I'll go bargain with the Kashuks.
Sergeant Gass reporting.
Get 5 men who can be spared from the work. Packs for a week. We're taking a trip across the river.
Yes, sir.
We'll leave in a couple of hours.
Yes, sir.
Meriwether persuaded one of the braves to be our guide by giving him a burning glass. Shortly before noon, my party left the island in one of the large canoes. Sergeant Gass, beside the guide, relayed directions to Cruzat at the tiller. We maneuvered through a cluster of islands. I didn't realize we were actually into the Multnomah until we were several miles upstream.
Captain, no wonder we never spotted this from the north bank of the Columbia.
Good-sized river, strong current.
We passed several island villages, but did not stop because the people were Kashuks. And I was afraid that if our guide was allowed a reunion with his people, he would refuse to go any farther. Late in the day, we reached a village that featured a big double house with perhaps 100 canoes drawn up around it. Our guide explained that this was the main lodge of the Nair Chekiu tribe. We decided to land and buy some roots and fish for supper. Little closer, Cruzat.
Yes, sir.
Touch bottom. That's it. You men out. Haul her up.
Sergeant, let's pay our respects to the chief.
Yes, sir. You stay near the boat. Watch out for thieves.
Let's go.
Well, that looks like the main entrance. I can see people inside.
Nobody's bothering to come out and welcome us.
At least nobody's pointing any weapons at us. I guess we can go in, sir.
There was a fire in the center of the lodge, and around it were grouped warriors and elders. In the deeper shadows of the place were quite a few squaws and children.
The old man in the middle, Captain. He's the chief.
I think so. I am Friend. I am one of chiefs of white men who stayed many moons on the Columbia. You have chief, one who speaks white man's talk.
I speak. I, Nair Chekiu. Aye, Chief.
I am Captain Clark. I come from President Jefferson of the great American states.
We no make trade. No like white trader.
I do not trade. I need food for my men.
No food.
I buy food. Give fine skins.
No food for white man.
But I will pay well.
No food. White man, no welcome. White man, go.
What do we do, Captain? Call the men and use force?
No. Watch me. I am not white man. I am white demon. Give food or I make bad medicine. Put curse on Mayor Chekiu.
White man, go. Or warrior will kill.
See compass in my hand. Straight needle. See, unfriendly one. When I speak name of great white father Jefferson, fire change color, go bad, explode. Needle on compass, go crazy.
No.
I call Great Spirit. Great Spirit, curse. Naya Chekiu. Please, fire spits. Fire green. Look at compass, old chief. Look at needle. Spin.
Stop. Fire. Stop, needle. Stop.
You give food.
Stop. Fire. Stop. Curse. No. Stop.
I give food. Good salmon. Good roots.
Good food. All you want.
An inch of artillery fuse and a pocket magnet had turned me into a magician. Palming the magnet behind the compass had been easy. And when I pronounced the name Jefferson, I had tossed the fuse into the fire. Now, with his people moaning fearfully in the back of the lodge, the chief trembled before me, begging for me to stop the spitting green fire and the whirling compass. I held long enough for the fuse to start to burn out. Then I held up my arm.
Oh, great demon! Plenty food, good salmon, good roots.
Jefferson! The fire became normal, and with the magnet back in my pocket, the compass needle held quivering on the north. Obeying the chief, squaws rushed to get the fish and roots we needed. The food was placed in our canoe, and we pushed off, watched by a respectful, if not friendly, audience.
Cruzette, you should have seen the captain. I tell you, it was like one of them stage actor fellas back home in New England.
I wish I had. You know, Captain, you will be mentioned in Indian history as a leading demon.
We spent that day and the following one in upstream exploration. Stopping at one of the upper villages, we were given a friendly reception by an old chieftain. He drew us a map of the river from source to union with the Columbia. On the 6th day of April, Billy Clark and his party returned and regaled us with the story of their trip. The following morning, we packed the boats and headed upstream.
This is a pleasant way to travel, through pleasant country. Enjoy it while you can. A day or so and we hit the white water.
Cruzat will do better along the north shore.
Yes, sir. The south gets rougher the nearer we get to the Narrows.
As we approached the first of the Cascade portages, Indian thievery grew worse and worse. The boats were safe only when manned and out on the river. Every minute in camp, our sentinels, we now kept a continuous watch, had to be alert.
Get away from that canoe!
Where is up? A fine tomahawk you got there. Oh, you don't understand, huh? That axe looks just like Johnny Colter's tomahawk that was stolen last year. Now, come on. Give it to me. Ah, so that's the way it is. All right, we'll see. Give me that axe. Now, get out of here.
What do you know about that? Coulter's long missing axe.
Coulter, come here and get your tomahawk back.
We reached the foot of the rapids and put into shore where Indians by the dozens and half-dozens came to observe us, try to steal from us, and then sneak away. We posted guards on the boats the moment they were beached and unloaded.
White House, Willard, LePage, Collins, watch that baggage.
I led the way in reconnoitering the steep and slippery trail over the rocks of the riverbank. Men could barely negotiate it with packs. Each boat had to be dragged up the rapids by means of a tow rope manipulated by 6 to 8 men on the precipitous trail. As we moved, Indians followed closely, making mocking noises and threatening gestures.
You stay away from us. Stay away or I slit your throat.
Hey, Captain, perhaps if I shoot over their head.
There will be no shooting, Charbonneau. Now let's keep moving. I restrained the men. The taunting savages were lucky to escape with a few kicks and cuffs. We labored mightily to beat the coming darkness and lost out. We were compelled to camp halfway through the portage. Guards stood over boats and baggage at both ends of the unfinished task. Several attempts at the baggage, foiled by our guards, kept the men from sleep. By dawn, they were all up again, refusing breakfast in their hurry to get the portage completed.
We have to fight Indians. We can't do it strung out all over the riverbank. Let's get this over.
Get the boats up. And tonight, I cook a special supper,
Despite a cold drizzle that drifted down most of the day, we sweated like men marching under a midsummer sun. Finally, the boats were arrayed neatly together and reloaded at the flat area above the rapids. I was changing the guard when I first missed my dog Scannon. I asked Cruzat about it.
I haven't seen him, sir, not since I ran an Indian away from him.
Ran an Indian away from Scannon?
Yes, sir. He had been giving Scannon food. The first couple of times Scannon growled, and the last time he wagged his tail.
Captain, these Indians are very short on the food. I think they are trying to lure Scannon to the camp kettle.
Captain! They got Scannon.
Here you are. Charbonneau, Cruzat, come on. Gas, you lead the way.
Northeast, sir. Toward their village.
As we ran, I thought of what the big Newfoundland had come to mean to me and the men. He had traveled with me from Pittsburgh to St. Louis, and with the expedition from St. Louis to the Pacific. He had caught squirrels and even antelope when we needed food. He'd saved our lives a number of times, and he'd served as a valiant, alert sentry. We were going to get him back unharmed if we had to fight every Indian this side of the Lolo Pass.
There they are, up ahead in the trees.
Come on, man, faster. There were probably 10 braves in the Indian band about a quarter of a mile ahead of us. They had tied a piece of rope about Scannon's neck, which compelled him to follow along, although he refused to move faster than a dignified trot. We gained on them rapidly. Half the Indians, frightened by our pursuit, simply faded away among the trees. The others stopped under our leveled rifles, dropped the leash, and made frantic, if hypocritical, gestures of friendship. Come here, Scannon. Come here, boy. You all right, boy?
Check him over real good, Captain. Make sure nothing's wrong.
He seems all right.
He better be all right. Captain, what do we do with these thieves?
Hey, Captain, killing one or two will teach the others not to interfere with us. Charbonneau's hit the right idea, sir. Just give me the word.
If you did that, we'd be risking war with their entire nation. We'll let them go. We'll be glad we got Scannon back.
But, Captain...
That's an order.
Yes, sir. All right, get.
Back at our camp, I discussed this last outrage with Billy Clark, and we agreed that we'd taken enough abuse from the Indians. We summoned the local chieftains to a council, and told them bluntly that we intended to kill the next thief who invaded our camp. The chiefs protested that what happened had been the work of a malcontent group, men who had once suffered at the hands of white traders. Solemnly, the chiefs promised to control their people. On April 14, we reached Celilo. The falls were even more formidable than I remembered. With Cruzat, Billy and I reconnoitered possible portage routes.
Well, spring thaws put a lot more fast water in the river than last winter, sir. There's no way to avoid long portages.
It's ironic. We need horses, yet we have plenty of horses up in the Nez Perce country.
Cruzat, going upstream from here, how much can we use canoes?
Well, probably more than you think we can, sir. But those extra long portages are going to waste time. If we can get any horses at all to tote baggage, we'd be better off on shore.
I thought so. Right now, I'd give $100 in gold for a few pounds of blue beads. We'd get horses in a hurry.
Well, you're pretty good at trading. If you took all the trade goods we have left and went on ahead, you think you could get us 8 or 10 pack animals?
I can try.
I'll bring the boats up as fast as I can. You bring me horses, and we'll put them right to work. We'll take the unloaded spare canoes and trade them to the people farther upriver for additional horses.
Good. I'll want Gaz, Charbonneau, and Willard. We'll leave first thing in the morning. The next morning, I set out to do some horse trading with the upriver people. Most of them didn't like us and seemed to take pleasure in pretending they were going to trade and then changing their minds at the last minute. We spent night after night in cold, dirty huts that were infested with vermin. We slept without blankets, hanging onto our rifles, and most of the time we were hungry. The men were able to subsist on Indian dog meat, but I couldn't take that. I stuck to boiled wapato roots. Maybe this outrageous diet had something to do with it, I don't know, but we soon reached a point of rebellion.
The mice, they run up and down my body all night long. Captain, shoot me for insubordination if you will, but I will not spend another night in those foul huts.
I thought all the mice were after me. No, Charbonneau, no more dirty huts. We're going to get a decision today or stop trying. Now, there are 2 villages a few miles ahead. Gas and I will take one, you and Willard the other.
Whatever you say, Captain.
With the aid of Sergeant Gas, I divided the trade goods into what I thought were attractive assortments. When Gas and I reached our village, we smoked a pipe with the chief, then laid out our trade goods in front of his teepee. Let it be known that we wanted horses. For the best animals, they wanted more goods than we could possibly give. But by the end of the day, we managed to acquire 3 fair-looking horses. Afraid the Indians would change their minds, we quit the village, retraced our steps a few miles, and waited for Charbonneau and Willard just beyond their village. Presently, they came toward us, leading a beautiful mare that would have done any show ring in Virginia proud.
I see you got 3, Captain. I hope they don't fall down dead when we put baggage on their backs,
That one of yours is a beauty.
Our 3 swaybacks will carry more than she will.
Did you actually trade for her, Charbonneau?
You mean did I steal her?
Yeah.
No, sir. I would have, but they were watching, so I had to trade.
How much did you pay?
Well, my ermine coat, 10 elk's teeth, and my shirt.
But you're wearing a shirt.
Oh, I mean the new one that Sacagawea made for me at Fort Clatsop. Captain, I have the feeling I'm no horse trader. As fine a horse as this is, I have paid too much for her.
We decided to extend our horse trading expedition another 2 days. Again, we separated and met at the close of the 2-day interval. Gas and I had 4 more horses, pretty poor specimens, but the best we could find. Then Willard and Charbonneau arrived. They brought in another quality mare, almost as fine an animal as the first one Charbonneau had acquired. Charbonneau himself was naked from the waist up.
Look at Charbonneau, Captain. Look at him. They got his last shirt.
I told you I was a puss.
Oh, I have a spare shirt. I'll loan you.
Merci, Captain.
By the end of the month of April, we had reached the point where our canoes were of no further use to us. Billy's horse trading expedition had brought us only a minimum of horses, and some of them had run away or had been stolen. We needed a few more to carry our baggage into friendly country. Now sneering savages stood about our camp enjoying our predicament. Billy and I offered them our canoes for 3 more horses, but they refused.
They think we will have to leave the canoe behind, so then they would get them for nothing.
What's for supper tonight, Charbonneau?
Dear, sir.
What's supper got to do with trading canoes for horses?
A lot, Meriwether. Those Indians are still hanging around watching. Well, let's give them something to watch. George, chop up one of the dugouts for firewood.
What, sir?
I understand. Very good, Billy.
Yeah. Oh, I understand too, sir.
Crozat, hand me that axe.
Indians watched stolidly at first, but as Drouillard started on the second of the dugouts, they began wailing in protest. Then one of them led a horse forward and offered to trade the animal for a canoe. George stopped his axe work. We got the absolute minimum of horses we needed to continue our journey.
Indian war party ahead. Halt! Halt!
Hey, they are coming fast.
Captain, I think they are Walla Wallas. That's Chief Yellop leading them.
Captain! Friends, welcome!
We're glad to see you, Chief Yellop.
So you're happy to be back among your people.
Oh, we too are happy. Tonight we will feast. Big feast for you and your men.
You are a good friend, but we have a problem we must solve. We must cross the winding Walla Walla River ahead.
Oh, yes. In the morning I will find rafts. Big dugouts. You will cross when you are rested. Come now. It is time for friendship.
We smoked the pipe with Yellop and his sub-chiefs, then relaxed before a fire with plenty of good meat before us. Billy, the chief, and I talked of many things. Of our trip to the ocean and our trip back, and of the long miles that lay ahead. And the men also relaxed in this atmosphere of hospitality. Then out came Crozat's violin, and the men put on a stomping contest for their Walla Walla friends. Morale was high. Once more, we were sure of reaching our destination, home.
You have been listening to Horizons West, the continued story of the Lewis and Clark expedition. Chapter 9, Homeward Bound, starred Harry Bartell as Meriwether Lewis and John Anderson as William Clark. Featured in the cast were Sebastian Cabot, Carl Swenson, Don Diamond, Bill Quinn, Dal McKinnon, and Paul Conrad. Our story was written by Carley and William Tunberg and directed by William Lally. Sound patterns by Gene Twombly. Michael Rye speaking. This is the United States Armed Forces Radio and Television Service.
hope our listeners aren't tired of hearing Happy New Year, because all of the people connected with this program wish to extend their hearty and sincere greetings, with every wish that 1936 will be full of gladness for you. Few companies have been so long identified with the history and growth of America as DuPont. And so it's fitting that DuPont should present the Cavalcade of America, a series of programs which tell you stories of traditional American spirit. It is the belief of the sponsor that a very real expression of the nature and tempo of American life is found in the ideal of DuPont's research chemist. Better things for better living through chemistry. Your comments on this series of programs will be appreciated very much by the sponsor. Just mail them to DuPont, Wilmington, Delaware, or to your radio station. This evening's story concerns the Declaration of Independence. Our Cavalcade Orchestra sets the stage with Victor Herbert's American Fantasy, which makes use of historic American airs.
I'll put the question. All in favor of Mr. Dickinson's resolution? Aye. Both sides were eager to postpone the actual vote on the resolution. But many members felt that it had a good chance of passing, and so a committee was named to draft a declaration stating the reasons for such a resolution. The committee consisted of Benjamin Franklin, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, Roger Sherman, and Robert Livingston. Jefferson, considered by many to be the best writer in the colonies, was chosen to make the original draft. Let us visit the Gratz house on Market Street, Philadelphia, late in June. Gratz is talking with his wife.
But Mr. Jefferson hasn't come down to his supper. I think I should call him.
No, don't disturb him. Mr. Adams and Dr. Franklin are with him. There are serious matters being discussed upstairs.
Well, maybe Dr. Franklin and Mr. Adams would like some supper, too.
Must you always be thinking of food? Important plans are being made for the welfare of our country. Tom Jefferson says that some delegates have been instructed to introduce another resolution for independence this session.
Oh, you're always talking politics and worrying about the country instead of attending to your business. More members of the Continental Congress to track up my floors, I suppose.
You don't appreciate the honor they do us boarding here in our home. Someday this house will be known as a place where history
well, you
was
wouldn't
made.
call it an honor if you had to sweep up after them. Oh, good evening, Mr. Temple.
Good evening, Mrs. Gratz.
It's young Mr. Temple, Father.
How are you, Mr. Gratz? Oh, come in, Mr. Phillips. Well, how can I serve you?
I was wondering if you could tell me where I could find more books or pamphlets like this Common Sense. Has Mr. Payne written any more?
I don't know, Mr. Phillips, but I'll ask Mr. Jefferson. He will know.
I'd be very grateful if you would.
Mr. Jefferson's busy now. He mustn't be disturbed. How does your father feel about your sudden interest in this kind of literature?
Father doesn't know. But I'm convinced his ideas are wrong, Mr. Gratz.
Yeah.
Our country must come first, before England or any other place. Don't you think so?
Yes, Mr. Phillips, I do think so. My parents came from Germany and settled here. They are like your father. They are always talking about the old country, but I am an American.
So am I. And our duty lies, I think, with the new country rather than the old. A place where we intend to live and bring up families. We owe it to future generations so that they may have a happy and a better place to live in.
Meanwhile, in Jefferson's room, he and his colleagues, John Adams and Benjamin Franklin, are formulating the document that was to help make the country a happy and a better place.
Well, Dr. Franklin, now that you've read the draft, what do you think?
As a whole, Mr. Jefferson, I am delighted with it. But I hope you won't be offended if a much older man makes a few slight suggestions.
Certainly not, Dr. Franklin.
For instance, you say, when in the course of human events it becomes necessary for a people, Now, wouldn't one people be more significant?
Yes. Yes, one people. That's right.
And you say, we hold these truths to be sacred and undeniable. Now, I would prefer we hold these truths to be self-evident.
Self-evident is stronger.
Above all, we must be careful not to alienate any of our colonies at this time. Unless this declaration of our reasons for freedom is passed unanimously by the Continental Congress, it will utterly fail in its purpose.
You're right about that, Dr. Franklin. It must be the unanimous will of the United Colonies.
Now, I've called the colonies the United States of America. Do you like that term, Dr. Franklin?
Yes, Mr. Jefferson, I do. The United States of America. May they ever stand so.
Discussion after discussion caused further postponement of any definite action. On July 1st, 1776, the Committee of the Whole met and advised the passage of the Lee Resolution. The vote was 9 colonies for and 4 against. We find Franklin, Jefferson, and Adams the night of July 1st discussing the situation.
9 votes out of 13. No, it's not enough. If the resolution isn't passed unanimously tomorrow, the rest of the world will never believe our colonies are united. Never believe we are the United States of America.
4 colonies against. Delaware, South Carolina, Pennsylvania, and New York.
The Delaware delegation is evenly divided. The New York delegation has no instructions, and none could possibly arrive by tomorrow. The South Carolina delegates feel that their instructions aren't broad enough to allow them to vote affirmatively.
Rutledge has called them together tonight. Perhaps his eloquence may persuade them.
I'm worried about Delaware. The vote will always remain 1-1. McKean for and Reed against. We can't count on Delaware.
McKean told me that he'd sent a postwriter for Caesar Rodney. As the 3rd member of the delegation, he's sure to favor the resolution.
Rodney's 80 miles away, and they say he's a sick man. We can't expect him to arrive in time to vote.
It's your own Pennsylvania delegation that worries me most, Dr. Franklin. That's a negative majority that no amount of eloquence or persuasion can change.
I know. Dickinson and Morris are sincere. So are Willing and Humphreys. 4-3 against. Come in.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Dickinson.
I trust I'm not interrupting.
Why, not at all. Come in, Dickinson. We were just discussing you.
Not too harshly, I trust. Gentlemen, I was much impressed with the vote today.
So much so that you wish to change yours, I hope.
No, Doctor. I still believe in reconciliation. But I love my country too well to hold out against wishes of majority. I know that independence must pass, and I realize the necessity for an undivided front. My conscience won't permit my voting for the resolution, but I can stay away from the Congress.
That would make a tie in the Pennsylvania delegation, Mr. Dickinson.
I'm on my way to talk to Morris. If he also remained away tomorrow, you would have a majority in the Pennsylvania delegation.
Mr. Dickinson, you and I have long been opponents. Now I want to express my appreciation and gratitude, sir.
Of course, I can't promise for Morris.
Tomorrow will tell the tale. We must wait for tomorrow.
On the morning of July 2nd, the delegates of the Continental Congress assembled to vote on the Lee Resolution. Franklin and Adams are seated together not far from the chairman, John Hancock, as the voting proceeds.
There's 8. New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, New Jersey, Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina.
4 more to come, with New York not voting.
The chair calls on Mr. Gwinnett of the Georgia delegation. Georgia votes in favor of the revolution. The South Carolina delegation, Mr. Rutledge.
Mr. Chairman, last night we held a meeting of the South Carolina delegates. Lasted well into the morning. We have come to the conclusion that our instructions are broad enough to allow us to vote on the question. South Carolina votes in the affirmative.
Rutledge must have been very eloquent. Well, I'm beginning to breathe easier.
There are still two more, and...
At the request of Colonel McKean of Delaware, I have postponed calling on that colony until an attempt has been made to secure a full representation. Yesterday, the vote was even.
Mr. Chairman.
Here's Colonel McKean now. I was just calling on you.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to report. Our third delegate, Mr. Cecil Rodney, has just arrived. He has ridden all night and wishes to apologize for rushing in so unceremoniously. But thanks to his arrival, the Delaware delegation supports the resolution 2-1.
Only your own colony left, Dr. Franklin?
Yes, only Pennsylvania.
Dr. Franklin, have the other members of your delegation arrived as yet?
No, Mr. Chairman, and I am certain now that Mr. Dickinson and Mr. Morris are not coming. I therefore announce that the Pennsylvania delegation stands 3-2 in favor of independence.
Well, boys, with the New York delegation in sympathy but not voting, I think we may call it unanimous.
It is unanimous.
Mark my words, Dr. Franklin. July 2nd will be a day of rejoicing and celebration in these United States until the end of time.
But July 2nd, the day the resolution was passed, is not the day we celebrate. On July 4th, after much discussion as to its wording, a formal Declaration of Independence, little changed from Jefferson's original draft, was adopted unanimously by the assembled representatives of the United Colonies. On July 8th, the people of Philadelphia are gathered outside the State House to hear the Declaration read by John Nixon. On the outskirts of the crowd stands young Philip Temple with his father.
I can't see why you dragged me here, Philip. You've read that document yourself at Mr. Jefferson. You almost know it by heart. We can't hear anything here anyway.
I want to see how the people take it, Father.
People, eh? I notice not many of our friends are here.
Many of our friends have fled the town, Father.
Yeah, that is true, sir.
I'm glad you're staying.
I'm waiting to see the outcome of all this. Anyone can put words on paper, but will they live up to their words? Will they sign this declaration?
Indeed they will, Mr. Temple. I'm sure of that.
We'll see, Gratz.
This is a great occasion, isn't it, Mr. Gratz?
A day to remember, lad. I'm glad to see you taking an interest, Mr. Temple. I feared perhaps you'd left town with your friends.
Father's staying in Philadelphia, but I'm leaving town, Mr. Gratz.
You, Philip?
Tomorrow I start for Boston to join General Washington.
Oh, good lad. Does your father approve?
The boy's of age. If I tried to stop him, your Liberty boys would try to run me out of town, I suppose.
Don't mind what Father says. I really think he's rather proud of me.
Mr. Nixon has finished reading the Declaration.
Those men in Congress have pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their honor. Could I do less? Every church bell in Philadelphia seems to be ringing.
Yeah, ringing in a new era.
They've given us the ideal. It's our duty to make it real.
On August 2nd, the delegates assembled. 56 signatures were affixed to the document, each man pledging his life, his fortune, and his sacred honor to uphold the principles of freedom and equality so that we and future generations should have life, liberty, and the chance for happiness. There are no braver names than these in the cavalcade of America.
The American spirit of independence is well exercised by the American housewife as she does her daily shopping. A good example of Mrs. Housewife's firm intention to get the things she buys in first-class condition, fresh, clean, and sanitary, and to see exactly what she's buying, is shown by the revolutionary improvements in packaging during recent years, particularly transparent wrapping. The story of transparent wrapping, or cellulose film, which is another name for it, is a mighty interesting story of chemistry. First manufactured in 1898 in England to wrap the famous Pears soap, and improved in 1908 by a French chemist, this material is now made in the United States. DuPont makes and sells it under the trademark cellophane. Maybe you have seen, or you will see, the recent spectacular moving picture, A Midsummer Night's Dream. in which 700,000 yards of cellophane were used to create the beautiful illusion of fairyland. Or you may have seen pianos and automobiles wrapped in cellophane. But these are the novel and unusual uses. The importance of cellophane to you is the way it protects your health by guarding things from dirt and germs, and also the way it keeps foods fresh and delicious. How can man produce a substance as shimmery as a moonbeam and as elusive as thin air out of the towering spruce tree? Because that's exactly where cellophane cellulose film comes from. Chips of spruce wood go through various chemical processes to end up as a thick liquid. Then an amazing transformation takes place in one step. As the liquid cellulose is forced through a long, narrow slot, it flows evenly into an acid bath. And the instant it touches the acid, it coagulates and becomes solid. Then it's purified and bleached until it's as clear as crystal and made flexible for easy and secure wrapping. DuPont chemists made many improvements in the original discovery. They found how to make this transparent wrapping moisture-proof to protect the freshness of foods and tobacco. In short, the thing to remember is that cellophane cellulose film is something chemistry has created to protect you by protecting the things you buy. It well illustrates the creed of DuPont research chemists: better things for better living through chemistry.
This program has come to you through the courtesy of DuPont, one of America's oldest enterprises, makers of chemical products since 1802. It's one of a series of programs in the Cavalcade of America, presented by DuPont each Wednesday evening at 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time over the Columbia Broadcasting System. When presented on the air, each program also contains a short, interesting story of chemical achievement, illustrating the DuPont chemist's creed: better things for better living through chemistry.
Palmolive Soap, your beauty hope, and Luster Cream Shampoo for soft, glamorous, caressable hair bring you Our Miss Brooks, starring Eve Arden. When the 4th of July weekend arrived at Madison High Summer School, it was welcomed most enthusiastically by Our Miss Brooks, who teaches English there.
I don't know why I looked forward to such a brief holiday with such keen anticipation. I like my work, and I'm very fond of my pupils. Then there's the school principal, Mr. Osgood Conklin. Well, what do you know? I just found out why I look forward to such a brief holiday with such keen anticipation. Mr. Conklin and I never have been what the scientists call chemical affinities. But last week we really reached the ultimate in mutual harassment. I would hesitate to describe Mr. Conklin's temper as volcanic, but by last Thursday I would swear I saw a thin trickle of lava flowing out of his ears. I was telling my landlady, Mrs. Davis, about it Friday morning at breakfast. He hasn't been this irritable since last month when I broke his new glasses.
My goodness, Connie, how did you do that?
It was an accident, Mrs. Davis. They broke when we both bent down at the same time.
You both bent down?
Yes, to pick up a hammer I had dropped on his foot.
Osgood is certainly hard to get along with. Oh, Connie, did you say you wanted tea or coffee this morning?